Hey, folks are pouring in. Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for joining. We will be getting started here in just a few minutes. We're going to let everyone else have some time to trickle in here. Yeah, so just give us a few minutes.
Great.
I'll start unmuting people, so if anybody wants to chat at all while we're here.
Oh, I can't hear this one. Hey, Ryan, glad you could join, bud.
Hey guys, sorry about the delay. Technical difficulties on my side, and I drank too many beers before this. So
No worries, we got you now.
Ryan, we're going to give everyone just a few more minutes here before we get started. We have almost all of our attendees here.
sweet. Thanks for your patience on me figuring this out.
Absolutely, no worries.
Nice sound.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was good.
am I not supposed to have video?
Hey,
No, I
welcome.
Huh?
Ooh, I like that sound.
Can you hear me, Jeremy?
Yes, sir, I can.
Should my camera be running? Because I can't find any settings.
Tori, for the webinar, do we open up cameras or?
Or is it just you guys?
Yeah,
I
I
think it
don't
might
think
just
we,
be us.
might just
Probably
be us,
just the
sorry.
panels.
Okay.
All right, looks like we got about 23 people. Tori, are we about ready to get rolling or give it just a
Yeah.
couple more minutes?
You can go ahead and kick it off here, Jeremy.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We'll be doing a little beer sampling and some PowerScale learning today. So we have Rob Shack from Dell EMC out of Nashville, and David Brigham from Kansas City, also with Dell, and from Tailgate Brewery, who is the sponsor of the great beer beside me. We have Ryan Brucci, and so we're going to, the agenda for today is we're going to start out with Ryan introducing the first beer or so. Then we're going to go over to Rob for a quick presentation over PowerScale. Come back to Mr. Brucci for another beer sampling. And then we'll go in straight into the demo of PowerScale. And we're going to open up mics so that we can have this interaction and just make it as fun as possible. So without further ado, Mr. Ryan, the floor is yours, sir.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, everybody. Introduce myself. I'm the brand manager of Tailgate Brewery. We are an independent craft brewery in Nashville, Tennessee. Very proud to say that we are independently owned, one owner, 0 investors, and we are operating 3 tap rooms in the Nashville area, each with its own unique production component. So we'll talk a little bit more about us kind of as we go through this presentation. But I want to start you guys with one of our flagships. So if you would, please pull out your Tailgate Lager cans.
Nice.
This is beer flavored beer. So we're kind of starting simple, and we'll go a little bit more into complex flavors as we go on. But that does sound delightful right now. So we call this a Keller Lager, and by Keller, it's a German word. It means unfiltered and unpasteurized. So while there's like a little bit of a transparency to it, it's not perfectly clear. It's got like a slight haze, really like a straw golden color. But again, this is beer flavored beer. We're using 100% German imported ingredients in this. So only malt that you find in this beer is Pilsner malt, which will give off like a lot of biscuity and bready tones. And then we're hopping it with Tradition and Saphir hops, which are both traditional German hops. So the way I like to conceptualize this beer is it's incredibly light. It's something that your domestic drinker will drink and not be offended by. And then your craft beer nerds will really geek out about the fact that it's all 100% German ingredients and fermented for a really long time in order to achieve this flavor profile. So everybody cheers and sip in with me.
Yeah.
Nice.
So very, very quick. It's just like a little bit of biscuit sweetness on the front end. You kind of get this like zap of hops, like almost an exclamation point of hops. Earthiness, if you're really going to be like fine tune and like craft beer nerdy, and dudes with really long beards that look like me will geek out about this kind of shit. But
Right.
really earthy, floral, kind of like a zap of hops, an exclamation point on the tail end, and then it finishes rather dry. We're drinking pretty much everything we're drinking today is quite sessionable. It's only 5% alcohol by content. But yeah, it's just a very simple, clean drinking lager, lawnmower beer, so to speak, if you will.
Cool.
No, that is a fine tasting beer.
Yeah, appreciate that. So we actually won Best Keller Lager in the United States with this beer last year in the World Beer Awards. So we took home a gold medal for Best Keller Lager, and got to go compete in the Worlds representing the United States. So we got to go compete against Germany and Switzerland and the countries that have been making these styles for 1,000 years. So really cool and super proud of this brand, especially to be able to offer it to the fine folks of Tennessee.
All right. So Ryan, while we're getting ready to transition into the demo, what would be the second beer to follow during the demo session?
Yeah, so the next beer we're going to do is actually Lime Lager. They sound similar in name, completely different styles. So key that one up, and we'll dive into it whenever everyone's ready.
You're already a beer ahead of me, man. It's no fair. So usually because I start by drinking about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't stop until 1 o'clock in the morning. So you're already 3 hours in.
All right. So, Rob, if you want to go ahead and kick it over to you for the presentation, and we'll get this rolling while the rest of us are enjoying some of the fine tailgate here.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers, everyone. Again, my name is Rob Schack. I'm a systems engineer for PowerScale Isolon based out of Nashville. And along with me, I have David Begum, who is
everybody.
one of our corporate advisors. I'm sorry?
Hello, everybody. All I'm saying.
And David Begum is one of our corporate advisory engineers based out of Oklahoma City. So we just wanted to spend a little time with you today. Again, thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us as you enjoy your beers from Tailgate Brewery. I'm going to spend a few minutes just kind of giving you what's new with Isolon, brief overview, just a couple of slides. And then we're going to go into a bit of a demo with some of the features of Isolon 1FS, PowerScale. And then we'll kick it back for some more beer sampling. and then we'll come back to us again, show you a little bit more feature functionality with Isilon 1FS, and then wrap it up with our final beer tasting. Along the way, if you have questions, please chime in, or you can put your questions in chat. David and I will work on answering those during either our presentation or while you're beer sampling, but for sure we'll get all your questions answered before we leave the call today. All right, so we'll get going and we'll kind of go, what's new with Isilon? So Dell earlier this year came out and they said, you know what, our unstructured data now is called PowerScale. And we got a lot of questions from customers, is Isilon going away? What's changed? Really nothing's changed at all. PowerScale is just a rebranding of Isilon. So it's still Isilon that we know, that we love for those that have Isilon. But some new feature functionality came out with the advent of PowerScale. So if we could go to the next slide. One of the things we launched when we rebranded PowerScale is that we launched some new nodes based on Dell PowerEdge servers.
There we go.
There we go. So today, for those that are familiar with Isilon, we have, I know I have some customers out there with Gen 5 nodes. These are our Gen 6 nodes. And at the very top, we have our, what we call Gen 6.5 or our PowerScale nodes. So again, Isilon, you can mix and match cluster nodes, types of nodes in a cluster, I should say. But really, that was the big launch, is just PowerScale is rebranding. So Isilon isn't changing, Isilon isn't going away. We still have our Gen 6 nodes that are going to be here for quite some time. We just added new nodes, PowerScale, F600 and F200 nodes. We can drill down to those here for a little bit real quick, just so you can see what those nodes are all about. So typically, we have our archive nodes that are slower spinning disks, cheaper but great for archive, and then we have our hybrid nodes. We have our all flash in our Gen 6 nodes, but we have all flash and we have all NVMe in our F200 and F600 PowerScale nodes respectively.
Right. Yeah. If you want to dive in a little deeper on those last two you just mentioned, there we go.
There we go. So, and that's what these nodes look like, because the all flash, so we're doing a little bit different with these nodes. Our all flash nodes have the ability of doing inline data reduction. Now, if you're familiar with Isilon in the previous generations, we've had data deduplication, but it's been post-process, right? With the flash, that gives us more horsepower. We're able to do inline data reduction, and we're able to really reduce the operational cost because of flash. And of course, obviously, performance is a big gain with all flash. You can see the specs here. The F600 has all NVMe with 100 gig uplinks to the core. And we're looking at 8 drives per node. So you can start at 46 terabytes and change the drive sizes to scale up to a maximum of 184 TB raw. And if we're looking for a little bit smaller on edge data centers and that sort of thing, 25 gig connect, 4 drives, and we can go from 11 up to 46 terabytes raw.
Indeed. Yep.
Also, we had some updates when at the same time that we rebranded Isilon for PowerScale, we also released 1FS 9.0. So for those that are familiar with 1FS, we've always been a multi-protocol platform with, whether it's NFS, SMB, Swift, HDFS, but we also announced support for S3 on Isilon, which we're going to talk about a little bit later today and actually show you some of that. We've also launched, you're familiar with Isilon, we've got a management reporting tool called Insight IQ. We kind of launched a new product that's in parallel with that for now. It's called Data IQ, which gives you the ability to go out and look at all the data on your Isilon, but it also can crawl any file or object data that's residing on Windows file shares. If you've got some files out in the cloud, anything that Data IQ can access, it can go out and really look at that metadata and give you an idea of, when was it created, how large is it, and where is it residing. But the really cool thing with Data IQ is you can actually do some actions on that data too. And if you've got some data over here on a Windows file server and you want to move it to Isilon, you can actually use Data IQ to move it. So pretty cool there. We also announced Cloud IQ, which gives us really the ability to, kind of manage from any kind of phone device, iPad, that sort of thing, be able to manage your Isilon array from that. So that was just a quick overview of kind of what's new. The big thing, we got a lot of emails from customers. What is PowerScale and is Isilon going away? The message there, no, it's not. It's still Isilon that we know and love. We just a rebranding of PowerScale.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, David, anything you want to add, or you want to jump into the demo?
Yeah, well, we're going to show some of the new features during the demo that are part of that. But just to kind of restate, what Rob said, if you are thinking PowerScale, it's the new nodes for sure that are based on PowerEdge servers, right? But it's also OneFS starting with OneFS 9. So you might hear sometimes us refer to it interchangeably as Isilon or PowerScale OneFS. So just know that, right as of OneFS 9, the OS itself has kind of been rebranded as well as PowerScale. So
we have a question here
yeah.
from the chat. What is the deduplication rate on PowerScale?
Yeah, probably 1,000%, 10,000. No, I'm just kidding. It's variable, obviously. Some things aren't that dedupable, but when we talk about data reduction, we're talking about both compression and dedupe. So where one may not buy you a lot, in the case of like images, you've already got compressed, JPEGs or something. You're not going to get a lot extra. Well, okay, no extra compression, right, out of that data set, but you might get quite a bit out of dedupe, right? So it's funny how sometimes I think when I see people review people's dedupe claims, they tend to give people that are conservative kind of a harder time because they're like, wow, look, your stuff must not dedupe very well. It's like, I personally prefer to under promise, how well it's going to dedupe, but obviously it just depends. It's always, we're deduping at a pretty small block size, so the potential there is there for really big gains in dedupe if you've got a data set that's very repetitive. So sorry, I can't give any hard and fast numbers, but if you've got a particular workflow in mind, yeah, we'd be glad to dive into it with you.
Can we ask questions verbally, or would you rather we put them in the chat?
I would
No,
love
it's
it to
wide
be
open.
interactive. So unless we end up with audio issues, let's do it. Let's do it live verbally. Yeah. Either way though.
This is Scott from Columbus, Ohio.
Hey, Scott.
Is the dedupe compression algorithm on the PowerScale similar in function and similar, well, just the algorithm similar to Unity or PowerMax or XtremeIO, or is it something completely different?
I would venture to say it's completely different. It's similar to our F800, or sorry, our F810. It was the first line we had, but keep in mind, we're doing everything at a file level, whereas those other platforms you mentioned are kind of block under the covers. So they're probably doing things differently under the covers, whereas we're doing it at pieces of a file level. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that is a definite key difference, file versus block with these architectures.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to dive into a couple of, we're just going to do some quick demo stuff. So real time, I'm sure something's going to go terribly wrong, right? So it always does with the live demo, but we're going to jump into that real quick.
It's Isilon. It's meant to go wrong.
I will tell you this. This is our lab, and this is real physical gear. Some of the VMs are virtual, right? Or some of the client, the Windows 10 box and the CentOS Unix box are virtual, but this is actual F800. This is alpha gear, so don't be alarmed if you see errors where we're out of firmware. It's gear we got our hands on that we could put in our lab. That's real gear, so we're just happy to have anything. And right now you'll see we've got two nodes here in the middle of the screen. Node 1 and 2. We're going to be adding a third node to make it a proper cluster, but we want to do that live. So Yeah, so Rob, take it away.
Yeah, well, let's start off. I mean, we've got our cluster right here of 2 nodes. Let's start off by doing what we want to do with an app, and let's create a share. So we're at our dashboard right now. We go over to our protocols tab, and you see the Windows SMB. We're just going to create an SMB share. We're in the user interface of OneFS right now. We could add a share via command line. There's several ways we could do. We could script it. We could automate it. But for this instance, we're just going to create a share. So we just click on the Create a SMB Share tab, and we'll give it a name. Call it, SMB Test, I think.
Sure.
That sounds good. And then we can browse out to that.
Look at that. We've already got a folder created with that name even.
Yep.
How handy.
That
How
outside,
handy.
is that within your access zone that you're creating that?
Yeah, we're keeping this really simple.
Okay.
So
Simple.
we've got a single access zone configured of system. So, but yeah, I mean, we just thought we'd keep it super basic. But yeah, if you had 5 access zones, you would have picked the one you wanted to create it in. And we just have the one, so it was easy.
Being interrupted.
Sure.
So, and we have some other options here. We'll just kind of go down. We don't want to change existing permissions, but let's see what permissions we have on this share. Let's view and edit that real quick.
You should probably make it not read-only.
Yep.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Full
Yeah,
control?
Just give it full control. Yep.
Could be read-write, but full control.
And then create share.
Boom. There it is.
So really, it's that easy to set up shares in iPhone. Not a lot of work. And again, like I said earlier, we could do this via CLI. We could script it. We can automate it. We could create that. But let's go ahead and, since we created that share, let's go over our desktop and map a network drive.
Yeah, under the heading of keeping it super simple, we didn't set up DNS names, friendly names, join Active Directory, or anything else. We're just going to connect to an IP address of one of the nodes. Fair enough.
Yep.
I mean, not how you'd normally do it in production, obviously. You give it a friendly name and get that set up in Active Directory and all that, but keeping it simple.
That's going to be test, yep.
Okay, and probably ought to do that. Here we go. Yep. And we'll just connect that way, and voila, here we go. It's empty. We're connected.
Okay. So really, setting up a share for
there it
your
is.
client, SMB, that easy. There we go.
Yeah. Tell you what, I'm going to move that one down to the bottom. All right. So that's the cluster. And maybe I'll get rid of this one and make that one on our desktop. So that's where we have some test data.
There we go. So the next thing we want to show or talk about is how easy it is to scale Isilon, right? So Isilon truly is software defined. So what we want to demonstrate here is that we're going to copy some data over to the share that we just created. And while that data is copying, that's simulating people accessing the Isilon during production. And we're going to go ahead and add another node to our cluster. And just to show how easy it is, there's no manual intervention at all to be able to expand this cluster out, and you don't have to take an outage. You don't have to manually move data around. Isilon really takes care of that for you. So you can see we're back over in our cluster here in the OneFS UI, and we're going to go to our hardware configuration tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to add another node, or we're going to start copying data, and we'll add a node.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start copying the data now. And notice we've only got 2 nodes. It's not really a proper cluster, normally 3 or more, but we're going to fake it with just 2 nodes for now, right? So we're going to drag this test data folder over to there and should just start copying some data. And it should take a little while. We've got a decent amount of data in there. Cool. All right. Like you said, we're going to go over to cluster management, hardware config.
Excuse me, can you click more details before that completes?
Sure.
No, I'm just Daniel. I'm a Unix administrator. I like the details.
All right. There's our 2 existing nodes. And you want to add a node, right, Rob?
Yep. Yeah, click on add a node. Sorry, I was watching the
F800,
the F800. Yep.
third node we're going to
Go ahead
add.
and add
There's
that
other
node.
nodes, but we're just going to add that one. Add node.
And then we'll go back to our dashboard.
Dashboard, cluster overview. And we weren't quite fast enough. The copy's over. I'm going to grab the other folder and resume copying some more test data. And I'll even, yeah, good. So you can see the third node starting to come in, right, Rob?
Yep. Yep. You can see if you highlight over it there, it'll show that the node's being added.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take a little bit for it to sink in, but what's going to happen is that node's being added. What's going on behind the scenes is it's going to start rebalancing, and we'll see it here in a minute. It's going to start rebalancing all the data. So the data is evenly spread across all three nodes in there. It's joined the cluster, and you can see there it's kind of taking 38K from the other two nodes, and what it's going to start doing as we watch it here, it'll just start rebalancing across. Now we're up to 608K on the SSD.
Yeah, one thing to note too is that the cluster size is, let's see, I might have to refresh this, right? The cluster size is now bigger. It shows the extra 20 terabytes from the third node. And, but you'll see the nodes aren't balanced yet. The first two have around 8.5 gig, but this last one is just coming up on 1 gig. Exactly what Rob said is happening. We didn't have to manually remember to go kick off some balance thing. It just happens. The cluster knows, you've added capacity. It's available right now, but I'm going to go ahead and balance out any of the existing data that you wrote when there are only 2 nodes. I'm going to spread that data out across all 3 nodes evenly. And in just that amount of time, look, it's already done.
There, it just kicked in. I was just going to say that. Right?
Be cool. Barely any difference at all, just for some little log files that are bigger on the first 2 nodes because they've been around for a while, but perfect. Cool. All right, 2 more quick things before we go to the next beer, right?
Yep, let's do it. Let's look at quotas. So let's go back to the share we created, and let's go to SMB test, and let's look at our properties and see how much space we have out there.
Okay. I'll just right click on the Z drive that we mapped earlier and go to properties. And there you go. It shows me the whole cluster, right? 60 something terabytes.
Exactly. And that's a problem. we don't want that, because what happens when you give users data, they use it, right? So
fill it up.
We want to go ahead and set up exactly. We want to set a quota for this cluster. So we can do that very easily by going over to our file system and clicking our Smart Quotas tab.
Yep.
And this should pull up the available quotas that we've created, which we haven't created any yet. Had we, this would show all your quotas for the entire cluster. You can do reporting on it and see how the quotas are configured. So very easy to manage. But real quick, we'll create a quota for this SMB test by creating a quota button there.
Yep. Create quota. And I see in the chat some folks want to know about the new features. We're definitely going to get to one of the big ones in the next session, which is S3, and we're going to show how that works and some other features too. So, all right. Yep. Here we go.
Yeah, we're just going to do a directory quota here, and then we can just browse the path. There's SMB test.
On that same folder, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then we have some other options here. You know, do we want to include snapshots and storage quota? Do you want to charge the end users if they want their file data protected, that sort of thing? Physical size is the actual physical size, including overhead for 1FS algorithms. We typically recommend just file system logical size. And then we want to specify a storage limit for our quota down here.
All right. So, yeah, definitely want to specify limit. And
yep.
We'll do a hard limit. What was the number you wanted to set?
What is it? 10 terabytes? Yeah.
Sure. We'll be very generous. 10 terabytes. Yeah.
And then, yeah, do the smallest hard or soft threshold.
Yeah.
Don't want
this
to
is the setting that will
we're trying to get away from.
Show the quota, not the size of the cluster. Exactly.
Right, which is where we just were.
Cool.
And then we can just use the system settings and create the quota.
Create. Confirm. There we go.
So it instantly goes out to that share and sets that quota. So no issues, no downtime, no people having to disconnect and reconnect. It does
Right.
it real time when we go back and look at the properties.
Boom.
There
10
you go.
terabytes.
And so now we need to expand it real quick, just as easy what we just did. We go back to our 1FS and we just view or edit our existing quota. And really it's as simple as going to our hard limit and upping it from what, say 10 to what, 12, something like that.
Sounds good.
Save the changes,
Mhm.
and there you go. All real time.
Boom. I didn't even
Again,
have to
super
close it
easy
and open
use.
it again, did I?
No, it just read it and just for us, but that's pretty cool.
Nice.
All right.
Cool. All right.
All right.
One last thing.
Quota's literally that easy. Literally that easy.
It is indeed.
Let's take a look at our last module we want to talk about. Let's talk about snapshots, which is
Okay.
obviously under our data protection tab. So we've got our SMB test share here. Let's go ahead and protect it with a snapshot. So in our snapshot tab, you can see snapshot schedules. Really the power of Snapshot IQ is being able to set policy.
Right.
So I have a lot of customers with Isilon in the field, and they'll do, hourly, weekly, monthly, yearly snaps, right? And just give those rollback protections. Every customer does it a different way, but the power of 1FS with Snapshot IQ gives you that ability to set those policies. Really, that's the power. But for this example, let's just create a quick snapshot on SMB test.
Okay.
So click create snapshot. Let's name it SMB test snapshot. And
Sure.
we can browse to the path of the snapshot or SMB test folder. We do have never expire, caution there. Let's not do that. And let's set it to let's just expire tomorrow. And then create snapshot.
Boom, done.
And there it is. So that's that fast, that easy. We just did a manual crease in the snapshots. Again, we can set these up on a schedule. But here's the other cool thing. We can empower our end users that say, hey, I went in and I was working on my system. I actually accidentally deleted some of my data. So we delete the data out of our folder.
Right. So I just browsed down a few levels, picked some files. I'll hit delete. Boom. Do you want to delete
Delete them
these?
out of
Yeah.
there. Yep.
Gone.
What's really nice here is we can have your end users, they can see only their data. They can come in here and right click on their map drive and click properties. And they can go into Windows because we have full integration with Windows and see previous versions.
There it
And
is.
boom, there's a snapshot that we took. So we can open that up by highlighting it and clicking open. And there's all our data. And I think you dialed into what, test data 2?
Yeah. So test data 2, the last folder, boom, there's all our stuff again.
There's all our stuff. So we can highlight and drag and
You can
drop.
see up here, this was
And
today's snapshot, the name of it even, right?
yep.
You could go pick
So now
everything,
end users can do their own restores.
just drag it down to the main live folder. Sure.
And they are still read-only snaps, aren't they?
Yeah, so this would be read-only. This is the snapshot, exactly. So if we tried to rename we actually don't even have a rename option there, but yeah, they're read-only. And but once you copy it back to production, yeah, now you could actually change the file.
Excellent.
Pretty simple, but to Rob's point, I mean, snapshots, these are intelligent and there's not any kind of pre-built container that you have to snap at, right? So you could say this one folder, I want to create a snapshot policy that happens to be the folder of the share. I could create a snapshot on a child folder that's different than the one that's on the parent. I mean, you've got a lot of flexibility. In fact, really across the board on Isilon, that's the big thing. It's one big file system. So you get to decide at what level you want to snap, replicate, put a quote on something, that sort of thing. Yep. Awesome. We're wrapping up our first session. We're going to do some of the new features in a minute. And I'll just take a quick second before we go turn it back over to do some more tasting and learning about some of the different beers. And just say that we have a partner product called Ransomware Defender that is pretty cool. It's watching your cluster, watching users accessing the shares and the exports. And if it detects a behavior that's not normal, not usual, like, hey, David normally accesses this share and changes a couple files a day. Today, he's changing all the files and he's replacing the regular ones with encrypted files. Should I be concerned? Yeah, probably you should be concerned. So this is watching the system, and it alerts administrators, letting you know, hey, there's unusual behavior. But check this out. If you're at lunch and you set it to maybe give you a 30-minute window to investigate, and you're at lunch and you don't get around to it, it will just start locking the offending person out. And it's so simple how it does it, but I think it's cool how simple it is. It actually just puts a deny entry at the share level for that user. Now, why would it do that? It's instant. It doesn't require them to update their token or anything. It takes effect immediately, and it's really easy to undo, right? You don't have to go write a bunch of permissions or anything. So it's a powerful product. You know, there's been a lot of more cybercrime lately, and people hacking and putting on, you know, encrypted files and that sort of thing. So be aware of that. If you want to talk to us more about that later, we'll be glad to. So, Rob, do you have anything else before we kick it back over?
No, let's go learn about some more beers.
Cool. All right. Let's do it.
All right, Mr. Ryan, you're up.
Hey, Ryan.
All right, guys. So next beer we're gonna do is the lime lager. So lager is just the style of yeast we're using in the beer. Generally speaking, they tend to be lighter styles. The main thing you're looking for when you're using a lager yeast versus an ale yeast is cleaner, crisper. It's very, very common to do ales in the United States. You can make an ale beer in about a third of the time you can make a lager. So as a result, the economic scale, thusly that IPAs and ales tend to be the more preferred style in the United States. But what we're going to do here is a Mexican style lager. So think Corona, Dos Equis, Negro Modelo, any of those types of beers. So our grains that we're using in it are corn, Pilsner malt, and then strangely enough, Vienna malt, which is going to give it our color. So Vienna malt's usually something you would find like in an Oktoberfest. So think Sam Adams, even like the Boston Lager, where it's going to darken it up a little bit, kind of give it like a caramelly color. And then we're actually using all natural, all organic lime juice in this beer. So think of like a better tasting Tecate or Dos Equis with the lime already added.
Organic, no less. Nice.
Yeah, so all of our beers use all natural flavorings with the lime, and we're gonna taste an orange wheat in a minute. Later on, we'll do a watermelon goza, and we fruit all of our beers with the same process. So we have a third-party company who's working with us to make these flavors. And effectively, what's happening is they're juicing limes. We have a fuck ton of limes, to be blunt about it. Juicing them, boiling out the water, and then repeating that process a few times over again. So you're left with like a distillate. But as you guys can experience, it just smells like lime zest, and it's really got this nice, fresh, tangy, kind of like zippy, like a little bit of tartness to it. But it's like you're biting into a lime, and that really jumps out. So nobody really drinks Corona or Dos Equis or Modelo without a lime, so we decided to cut the middleman out. And interesting enough, Vienna obviously is a German malt by trade. There's a ruler in Mexico back when the Spaniards conquered it who was a fan of German styles of beer, and he craved it when he took over Mexico, and started importing this malt specifically so he could drink his favorite German beer as he was ruling over Mexico it was late 18th century. And the tradition kind of stuck. So because of this one guy's penchant for a specific German malt, that's how these Mexican lagers all have this German import to them, even centuries later. So kind of cool. And this is our take on that style. So little, again, really light, sessionable. If you guys are feeling really froggy right now, I throw a shot of tequila in this when I enjoy it. But really just delicious, especially poolside.
All right. So for those who may be one or two above here, is it okay to move straight to the orange wheat?
Yeah,
We've already
yeah, I'd love
partaken
that.
of the lime.
Yeah, let me grab my other can real quick.
I have another question.
I have a question
What's
too
with
over
the
here.
trucks and the label art?
Sorry, say that question again, brother.
I'm curious about the truck use in your label art.
So we're Tailgate Brewery, so it's just a play on our logo. That is our pickup truck.
It's a Chevy, right?
No, so it's not actually a real it's not a real truck. It's fictional. Crazy thing is our owner started this company with his late father back in 2007. They're just homebrewer hobbyist, and they made a t-shirt not too dissimilar from the one that I'm wearing. Just says Tailgate Beer on it with a little mock-up of this truck they got their friend to design, and they trademarked it. And before they ever bought or sold a beer commercially, they were sued by Anheuser-Busch, who said that they were the official beer of tailgating, and our owner and his father had no right to use those words in branding. So per the nature of intellectual property and trademark, before our company ever made any dollars, we beat Anheuser-Busch in a court of law and won the rights to the name Tailgate Brewery, or successfully defended, if you will. So that's kind of the explanation behind the truck. With a lot of these, we call these core beers, flagships, if you will, the ones that we take to market that you could find in grocery retailers throughout the state. We like to keep it very, very blatant for what you're going to experience. So these ones are pretty simple, where it's all right, cool. Here's that fruit in the back of a truck.
I absolutely am. I'm a home brewer myself. I've been brewing for
Nice.
about 5 or 6 years. I absolutely love label art. So a company like Three Floyds,
Yep.
it's at the top of my list of favorite creators. But
Likewise.
it's actually pretty good. I'm not a big lager fan. I don't like Budweiser, Corona, Miller, that kind of junk. I am a craft brew drinker.
Same.
So if you're ever in Cleveland, stop on by. We'll take you out to Fatheads, and we'll get you some of the best IPA in the state.
Big Fatheads fan. Sorry,
Michael, not to get off track. Because I also used to homebrew quite often. A couple of my customers used to brew with me. Do you grow your own hops up there in Cleveland?
I do, sir.
What hops do we grow?
Let's see. Fourth generation. What the hell do I have? Because I used to love Hefeweizens.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew a very typical German hop for it. It's pretty good. Oh shit! What was it?
Saz, Tettnang.
Columbus, Tomahawk.
Well, I guess my question is how did you get past the 25 to 26 foot tall vine?
Well,
like I did.
Unbeknownst to my wife, who seriously would have hated what I did with the house, I have a grow box on the ground. I have the ropes coming up over my garage, and then they go up to the top eaves of the house. So vertically, I have about 25 to 30 feet.
Damn.
And it creates this curtain that's when it's fully, like in September, early October, if I don't harvest in time, there's like this green carpet on this porch. My wife hates it.
So
Alright.
you mentioned Hefeweizens, which is like a pretty good segue for me. This orange wheat, most people think of wheat beers, they think of Hefeweizen, which is a traditional German beer style, using Hefeweizen yeast to get most of the characteristic of the beer. So Blue Moon commercially is what most people know that style as. So what we're drinking here is
That's a Belgian. Sorry, not to interrupt. That's a Belgian white. That is a wit. That is not a Heffy.
Sure. So very similar
That's the
yeast
difference.
characteristics. It's stemmed off the same genesis. So it kicks off the same coriander and clove and pepper and some like weird esters and phenols that some people don't personally care for. I'm that guy myself. So the way I like to liken it is sometimes people perceive cilantro as tasting like dish soap. There's a lot of people that perceive that strain of yeast as kicking off like electrical fire, or where it's like really like burnt rubbery. And that's just the nature of the aromatics coming off it. So
Is it the clove or the bubble gum that drives you away, or both?
so I don't care for it personally. I think it's more of like when people overdo it and do like the coriander and the peppery component of it too. Because I love saisons, and the floral component of it is just fine to me, but it just tends to be abrasive in most domestic made Hefeweizens, I'll say. But I can, we'll do the international imports all day and love those styles. So when it came time to make one in Tennessee for, a more common palate, I will say, we used a Norwegian yeast strain, Quake yeast, for the beer nerds in the group, but it's an ale yeast. So it just kicks off a bunch of fruit. It's almost exclusively wheat malt, so really soft, light mouthfeel to it. And that's something that you could give to your friend who drinks Blue Moon and, can convert to this rather easily.
Need to find a new friend.
Yeah, I'll second that one all day.
Honestly, that used to be all I would ever drink. Then I got addicted to Goggle Fogger, which is Fathead's Heffy. Then I had my very first Zombie Dust. Now that's a pale ale, but it is so hot. Most people consider it an IPA, but it's not technically. And I fell in love with it, and that was it. I've never gone back since.
I prefer Alpha King, which is a hot take. It's a small foxhole that I'll die in. That's a better beer, but
and stouts. Oh my goodness. Oof.
Yeah.
So I akin this to the way I came upon Iceland storage. So we used to use anything we could afford to buy, right?
Sure.
And about 7 or 8 years ago, we had an issue where we were running out of storage. We had absolutely no space at all. And the Windows administrator and myself and our director were charged with coming up with the next level storage. We looked at Dell, we looked at HP. Well, it was actually EMC at the time before Dell bought them. My director and I really liked Isilon prior to the EMC acquisition. Really good product. A lot of bioinformatic research facilities use it. That's what we do. We're just nothing but a bunch of. Anyway, we looked at all these different products, and the Windows guy and I actually thought we liked the Dell Compellent solution because it offered us block, which the Isilon does not. You can do block on Isilon, but it's a hokey block. Unbeknownst to us, our salesman from EMC went all the way up the chain, our CEO chain, just shy of the CEO, and we ended up with Isilon in our lab. 7 years later, I've got 10 petabytes on the floor, and I've got a roadmap to 30. I have no plans on switching to NetApp, which the rest of the enterprise is doing. I moved from NetApp to the Isilon product. So, like the beer, that's kind of how I moved from the stanky little Blue Moons to craft beer. This, I normally wouldn't drink the lime lager, but this is good.
Thank you. Yeah, with the ones we take to market, we like to be the gateway drug, so to speak, for some of the craft drinkers to come into our tap rooms where we rotate beers constantly. We brewed 190 unique recipes last year from our pub system. And we like to offer that variety to any palate and any drinker, regardless if it's, you're a historical Blue Moon drinker or Mick Ultra fan, or you're the most experienced craft palate in the world.
What I like about this in particular is, sorry, not to interrupt, is the fact that it tastes like a real lime and not like a syrup that you would add. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally agree. It's easy to overdo it.
All right. Well, that is a fantastic segue, Mike, back into demo section number 2, as we enjoy the lime and my wife just finished up the orange.
Nice. Your wife drank your beer?
My wife drank my beer. That's just
I like
I
it.
pour you out a little bit and bring back the rest, and she took it all. So I will go to the next one. What is your recommendation, Ryan?
Oh yeah.
Let's go to the Southeast IPA next, please.
Okay. So for us that wives have drinking our beer, go ahead and go to the IPA.
They won't touch that stuff.
Next round of the demo.
You know,
I got one more comment before you start. If we're going to be drinking a beer every like 12 minutes, we need to work some time into the schedule for pee breaks.
What?
That's awesome.
And we all know the IPA face that we're talking about, right?
You've got 2 minutes. Run for it.
All right, I'm going for an IPA.
Oh my. Yeah, so I'll kill a little time while some folks are running for the restroom to come back. Has anybody ever used the ransomware defender I kind of gave a quick shout out to beforehand that hasn't run away? So take a quick break. You want to raise your hand or unmute and just say, hey, yeah, I've used it. I know there's probably, out of the 40 some odd people that are on here, I bet you there are some people that have used it. I do see somebody, Tammy, raise their hand. Yeah, you feel free to unmute if you want to just say a few words, but I just think we were talking about this the other day, and certainly having a way to recover if someone were to, be compromised and a lot of your files start getting replaced with encrypted versions that are, being held ransomware. That's good. That's certainly better than not having a way to recover, but you still might be in a jam while it's happening, right? And not have a good way to stop it from getting worse. Snapshots help, right? Other kinds of backups help recover, but they don't really stop it. The ransomware defender can actually put a stop to it by locking people out that are compromised. And by the way, it also does a cool thing, which is just in case you don't have your own snapshots configured aggressively, it'll take an extra one at the beginning of an event. If it thinks something might be going on, it'll just take an extra snap to give you a place to go back to if if it's right and you are being attacked. So kind of interesting. All right, maybe I've stalled long enough. Unless anybody wants to raise their hand and talk more about that. Feel free to reach out to your data center SE or your UDS SE, and we'll be glad to talk more about it or show you a demo. It's really not, cost is not really an issue with that product. It's not that expensive at all. It's just probably more, a little bit of time to take you to implement it than anything. But all right.
This is a Superna product you're talking about?
It's right, Superna Ransomware Defender, and they also have another part that kind of goes along hand in hand, which is a third copy where imagine another Isilon cluster, whether it's your own or maybe even provided through one of our cloud offerings, but where you could sync to yet another cluster, and when you're not actively in the middle of syncing, all the network connections are severed. So it really is sort of like an air-gapped copy. And if it ever detects any kind of events, it will, even if it's in the middle of syncing, it will just stop and isolate that cluster. So yeah, it's another option in addition to Ransomware Defender that I thought would be interesting to talk about. So cool. So some folks said, hey, yeah, I want to hear more about the features that are available in the PowerScale versions, right? So 9.0, and we've actually released 9.1. And by the way, there's this interesting little doc. If you haven't run into it, let's see, it's buried on my screen. I got to try to figure out how I'm going to drag it over there. Here we go. It's available. I believe it's available just on the web. It's called, the name of the document's titled WMC PowerScale 1FS release contents. And the cool part about this doc is every time there's a new version, it tells you what new features were released and kind of what version they came in, right? So I'll scroll down. You can see all the versions. This one covers all the way through 9. If you're like, where did I get, you know, this one feature, and maybe it was an 8.21. You're like, oh, that's where we released, you know, inline dedupe for the first time on the F810. Or, right, large file support came in 8.22, right? So things like that. It's kind of a handy way to know what version you have to get to or newer to get that feature. But as we talk about 9.0, you'll see that's the first version where we supported the new PowerScale nodes, the F200, the F600, and obviously inline data reduction for those two platforms. But the big one that most people want to talk about usually is S3. So now Isilon has an S3 protocol option, and we are still a file system. We definitely are still a scale out file system, but we're doing S3 on top of file because sometimes people want some S3 access, but they don't want to buy a purpose-built object platform, right? Maybe just don't need enough. You don't have petabytes of it, but you do want to get started with it. So, so I'm going to demonstrate a little bit about S3 right now. So pretend this is an actual use case that came up lately for me. And so this is a scenario where this company has a lot of vendors, contractors out in the field with laptops and a bunch of scanning equipment, and they're creating LiDAR images of bridges and other sites. So they were like, we need a way in the field to kind of gracefully transfer the data back to the home base. And sometimes the network connections aren't always the great out in the field. So we mused about this and we thought, you know, S3 really is just a bunch of, you know, HTTP puts and gets and some other stuff, you know, as a front end. So why don't we just use that? Now that Isilon has S3, this is the way we're going to connect. So this is a simple little tool. I'll maximize it real quick, called Cloudberry Explorer for S3. If I go to the connection option, I think it's on the file menu. Yeah, edit accounts. And I look at the one I've configured called 1FS S3 and I edit, you'll see this is all I needed to know. And I'm sorry if it's kind of small for you, but I'll just tell you what it says. Display name, whatever I wanted to call it, I called it 1FS S3. Service point, normally that'd be a friendly DNS name, but again, for my demo, I just use the IP in the port. And then that's the access key for the account I created. And then there's a secret key that it uses to connect. And I chose not to use SSL because I didn't want to have to go configure a bunch of certificates for the demo, right? But that's really all there is to it. It's that easy. Boom, I click test connection, it worked. And over on the right side of my screen, you see that I'm connected to 1FS S3. So the right side represents a bucket that I created on the Isilon, which, by the way, why don't I just take just a moment to show you. So here we are back to the web UI. Protocols, just like we went in and created the SMB share and I created an NFS export earlier, there's the S3 option. So all I did was click on that and I just created a bucket called this and gave it a path, told it a few things about it. I chose not to put an ACL on it. Think of that as more like share level permissions for S3. Right, so I chose not to, kind of equivalent to leaving the share level wide open and doing everything through, you know, other means. But that's it. That was it. Creating that. Pretty much all I had to do. Key management. I had to generate a key as well. Right, so I just went over here and created a key for it. If I picked the user I created it under, you'll see the account that I created under, you'll see there's a key that exists there, right? There it is, existing key. I created earlier today. All there's to it. So pretty simple on the Isilon side, pretty simple on the client. And now this is my C drive desktop. I browsed down to a folder called test data mini, and it's just got some of these LiDAR files in here. And so literally, I mean, I could do it a bunch of different ways, but I'm just going to select some of these files and drag them from my local C drive over to the OneFS S3 bucket. It asks me if I really want to do it. Yes. And starts queuing them up. And you can see down here in the bottom, there's a little bit of statistical info, right? It'll start copying them over here in a second. The first few are already there, right? And it's getting to the bottom. Now, that's just one way you can do it. Let's see. Everybody, somebody give me a sound check just to make sure you can still hear me and everything's good.
You're good.
Okay.
Good to go.
Great. I had a weird thing happen with the sharing tool, so no worries. So they're over there now. I mean, this little tool is simple. There's a lot of other S3 uploaders out there, but this one you can create a sync relationship between some folders and just let it do the moving for you once you're connected to the internet, or right, to however you want to expose that over through a proxy, or maybe you want to do it over VPN, whatever. All your different options there, but it could just sync them kind of lazily behind the scenes. You don't even have to manually move stuff over. So that was the S3 part, right? So I just put a few files on there. What does it look like to the cluster? Well, I could look at files a couple ways. I could just do File System Explorer on the cluster, and I could go browse to the bucket, which is I put under data, and I just called it that SCIQ bucket one. And you could see there's some files there now. There's some data there. That's fine, but really the power of this workflow is I have Windows servers that need to process that LiDAR images and transform it in some way, right? And model it and do other things with it. So I could just go back to protocols, Windows sharing, create an SMB share, and I'm just going to call this LiDAR test. Give it the path I want. I'll just browse to data, and then there's the folder, CIQ bucket one, select it, and I'll take all the defaults. I probably want to make it writable, so I'll just change this to read write. And I may just do that for the purposes of the demo so that I don't run into any permissions issues, because I didn't really go study how that folder was created. But there we go. There's the share LiDAR test. So now, just like we did before, I could go to, I don't really need that one. I'll just create a new folder here. And I don't really have to map a drive. I could just click in here and whack, give it an IP address, since I haven't set up all my friendly names. Right, it could be any node in the cluster though. And then LiDAR-test, enter. It's going to ask me, I picked a different node, so it's going to ask me to authenticate again. Wow, boom, there it is. There's an SMB share of the same bucket that is my S3 bucket, where I just put all those files from my S3 uploader. In fact, let's just go back to the S3 uploader. Maybe I'll make it less than full screen. And we'll see as I drag some more of these files over via S3. And again, they kind of get queued up. The tool queues them, makes the S3 connection. So, but there they go. They're starting to transfer now. Boom. As they're coming in live real time, they're showing up under SMB for the client there. And here's a putty session. I just did an NFS mount. There it is. I just mounted a folder called ISI1 in my mount directory. And I mounted the Isilon cluster, again, just simple using an IP. It'd normally be a friendly name. And I connected to that path, same path. And I just went with the default, so it said all the mount options using defaults. And I think that's the directory I'm in right now, yep. And so if I just do an ls, you will see the same content. And now my Linux box has access to the same directory, and I can just start banging on it with a Linux application to transform those LiDAR files or do whatever's next in the process with those files. So I didn't have to like transfer them or wait for a 2-hour, process to run that transforms, copies, extracts them, does anything special like that, right? That's really what I wanted to show you. So, I mean, I just showed you a 3-way multi-protocol scenario where we're uploading via S3 and then we're reading and writing via NFS or SMB. So let's see, I haven't really been keeping an eye on the chat, but anybody feel free to unmute. And if you want to ask any questions about this or any other topic, Isilon, we can take a couple questions before we go back and talk about the last few beers. I don't think we've opened the Gosa. I know some of you are waiting anxiously for that one.
Can you go back to the GUI, please?
You bet.
Just got a real quick, see, I see you're running 9. Go to data protection, Sync IQ.
Okay.
Settings.
Not too many things there. What were you thinking about?
There's supposed to be a certificate, a methodology to import certificates in the GUI now, and I don't.
It is in 9.1. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm running 9.0. So
Thank you.
sorry about that. Yep.
No, not at all. I'm running 8.2.2, and I was going through the exercise yesterday, and they kept saying, "Oh no, it's in the GUI." I'm like, "Oh no, it's not."
Right. If anybody needs, I'll just throw it out there. Hey, the folks that are still on the call here that are hanging in with us, I'll just mention that your Dell SE, whether it's UDS or even your data center SE, can provision a demo center lab for you and then give you a link to it, and you can access it directly without us even needing to be involved in. There are demos, there are lab sessions for messing with S3, and it's actually got a full curriculum that walks you through creating the certificates, creating all the steps and connecting and testing. And so if you just follow the curriculum, the Word doc, from beginning to end, you will have learned quite a bit about how to do that. And there are other demos and labs out there as well. So keep that in mind. I had that provisioned as a backup just in case something went wrong with my lab. And it's pretty powerful. There's a little bit of everything in the lab. So pretty much everything you need to really exercise things and try out new things. And of course you can deploy your own virtual cluster, right? Download the simulator as well. But sometimes the labs are handy. They have a separate Active Directory, a separate everything, DNS, everything you might need. So kind of handy. Any other questions? Anybody else want to unmute or raise their hand? Or I'm not watching the chat because it's disappeared from me. Let me see if I can find it again. Not sure what happened to my, not sure here. I don't want to borrow too much trouble here and blow myself up. So I'll just say we can transfer.
So one of the questions that came in is,
sure.
Robert answered it about 1FS. So thank you, Robert.
Yeah, one of the questions, David, was is 1FS just with the PowerScale line? And of course, 1FS is our secret sauce for both Isilon/PowerScale.
Right. Yeah. If you've got Gen 5 nodes, Gen 6 nodes, you could deploy PowerScale 9 and 9.1, right, and get the benefit of the new software without having to have one of the new nodes. Yeah. Good call. That said, you have to be running 9 to use the 2 new nodes. So if you have, let's say you've got a Gen 6 cluster today and you want to add a tier of all flash F200 to it, we would need to upgrade the cluster to 9 or later and then add the F200 nodes to the cluster. So anyway, yeah, good question. Any more out there? You want to switch back and talk about beer for a few minutes, and then we can stick around and do open mic if anybody wants to ask other PowerScale or Isilon questions.
Yeah, that's fine. So I think we've gone through up to the IDPA. which I believe leaves the watermelon and
no.
the beer nuts or peanut butter stout, which is the one I'm looking forward to.
Oh, forgot about that one.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're
Even
gonna
the
do
best.
Save
we're
the
gonna do this is gonna be a weird segue, but we'll do IPA, then the Goza, and we'll probably end cap with the peanut butter, as strange as that sounds.
Well, I gotta tell you, Ryan, chatting with a couple of my customers, the watermelon is not sure what to think of the
Are
watermelon.
you seeing that's an acquired taste? I bet I'm gonna love that one.
You like sours?
I do love them.
Well, then most Goses are pretty good.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out shortly. I'm all for honest feedback though, so if you hate it, I'm the guy you need to complain to.
I am sending mine to my daughters, though. But
So,
the peanut butter stays with me.
yeah, let's hit the Southeast IPA. So, this is a West Coast style, if you're to classify it. And we actually took home a gold medal last year for the best West Coast IPA in the United States in the U.S. Open of Beers. So this is our flagship. When we talk about West Coast style, think
Nice.
dry, dank, bitter, piney as all get out. It's Citra, Amarillo, Columbus, and Simcoe hops. So all Pacific Northwest hops. You're going to get real dank, kind of like weedy almost on the aroma. A little touch of some pine. And then if you hunt for it, there's like mango or some Citra coming in as well. So let's dive into it together.
Not getting the pine.
Your Citra?
It's good, though. It's got a good mouthfeel.
Yeah, so this would be like comparable to Lagunitas, Bell's Two Hearted, Founders All Day IPA, Stone, some of these other big national brands, trying to give everybody like a jumping off point on what they could compare these to. We're actually like using a little bit of honey malt in this to give it a little bit more color and a little bit more flavor for the hops to play off of, so you don't get a one note experience that's just bitterness on the palate. IPAs are the most popular style of beer, and this has been our flagship, and it's done very well for us.
It's rather sessionable at 6.2%.
Yeah, that too. All right.
So do you have plans to distribute to Ohio?
Not currently. So the hard thing with beer distribution is the second you go out of state and it's a little bit out of our reach, it's hard to control things like quality. So I want to make sure that like the beer is someplace that I can, in half a day's drive, come in and touch it or see it if I need to. You can make like some quick bucks by just dropping beer or shipping it to a distributor a couple states away and doing a one-time drop. But how much like sustained brand growth is there in that? I'm skeptical of. So I guess if you guys are Ohio, like Mad Tree just entered our market about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And, you know, they support it locally with a couple of sales reps and a really, really talented distributor who can help be a good steward of their brand. So for us being a small business, making that investment and hiring on an extended sales force that's a couple of states away is quite an undertaking. So it's nothing on the horizon for us yet, but we're definitely not shutting it out. Just right now it's Tennessee only. And I kind of like say slightly tongue in cheek is that I don't have a tap handle at every bar in Nashville yet. And until that happens, I don't really want to look outside of the state of Tennessee.
Plus, you won't end up like Great Lakes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair comparison too.
I think they had very, very good beers early on, and I think their quality has gone to the dogs.
Downhill.
I'll be nice.
Yeah.
They have good beers out there. I'm not denying that, but not like they used to.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. Let's go into the Goza then next. So,
I'm
Sorry,
game.
I just took a sample. That's a little different.
weird, isn't it?
It's a little weird. but not
So-
bad.
We're using a house bacteria in this beer. It's called lactobacillus, and it's how most people make sour beers. So
Right.
it's the same bacteria you would use to make sourdough bread. Also, like a lot of people take it as a probiotic. So we're throwing this effectively into the beer in order to get that tartness and that sour flavor. The rest of the beer is a rather simple wheat ale with a touch of sea salt. So Goza is classified as a sour with sea salt. And then we're also using the all natural watermelon flavor that we use through the brewing process that I explained earlier.
Gotcha. Yeah, we've had a few stouts that accidentally got infected with lactobacillus, and you really don't want your stout to turn into a sour. Really, it's not what you're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, so it's we for the beers that we take to distribution, we only use lacto because relatively or comparatively, I should say, simple to kill. Like
Right.
heat kills it pretty easily, and like caustic, just like a normal CIP procedure will clean it effectively. If you're getting like the weirder shit like Pediococcus or Brett, we're actually doing that in our East Nashville tap room. So we have a 10-barrel oak foeder in there. It's all French oak. And so we'll take our wort, transfer it to the other side of Nashville, pump it in through an external tube through the wall of our building, pump it into a 10-barrel oak foeder, let it condition for truly however long the fuck we want, and then pump 9 barrels of those 10 into a secondary fermentation vessel, whether that's a port barrel or a red wine barrel or a whiskey barrel or just into a Grundy to get fruited. So like the weirder and funkier and like, like the horse blankety sours that we'll do.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
I love horse leather.
It's really strange, but it's a very niche market if you're looking at like the total beer drinker crowd, but for like
Pretty small market.
Yeah, but for like us as craft beer nerds, like, yeah, man, give me the wild fermented and the spontaneous firm projects, and give me the port barrels that take 10 years.
You're not doing the open fermenting, are you?
No, not yet. So over there, like, it's not open. Everything is in that that foeder, and then we'll do a little bit of secondary fermentation into some of the barrels, kind of depending on what we're trying to achieve. So we've done a couple turns. There was a saison that went through it. Let me see, the other one was like just a Brett pitch that we threw in as well. So like our base of that foeder is really cultured at this point. It's got a little bit of different yeast, a little bit of different bacteria. Quake is our house yeast now, which is a weird thing to say. It's an old Norwegian yeast strain. Kind of acts more like an ale yeast than anything else, but it can fully ferment a beer in about 48 hours, reach terminal gravity. So which is like a godsend. And it works at super high temperatures. So we can ferment up to like 90 degrees with some Quake yeast.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that being said is our like house wild strain that we're using at that East Nashville tap room and foodery is really one of a kind now.
Oh, so it's more like the beard yeast.
Sorry.
Oh, it's a joke. I said it's more like the beard yeast.
yeah, something along those lines.
And another product I can say, but we're in mixed company, so I'll be here.
Yeah.
Before Wicked Weed sold out, right? They're in Nashville. They got so popular and so big that they had to move all their sours out of the main brewery to a different location because they just couldn't handle all the people. So they created a second location, called it the Funkatorium.
Yes.
It's where you went to get all your cool sours and everything.
Like that.
It's gorgeous too. Part of it is, like they ran out of production capacity at their original Asheville location, but with the volatility of those bacteria,
that's a good point.
So to prevent, a brewer's infection,
Sure.
it's like that's why we produce all of our Pedio and Brett sours on the other side of fucking Nashville from the rest of the beers that go to market, so we don't run the risk of an infection.
Good idea.
So you're using rancid.
Did I lose y'all?
I'm ready for a stout.
I have to tell you, I wasn't expecting much from the watermelon, but surprisingly, it's not bad.
Yeah, I see you got half a pint gone
You're
already.
a convert. You're a convert.
No, the
It
ghosts,
is
Not bad at all.
the ghosts do have a very particular palate. If you don't
It's
like
an-
salt, if you don't like salty kind of, yeah, the Himalayan salt though can be really, really quite exotic.
Yeah, goses are like tend to be like as far as the spectrum of sour beers. If you've never had one before, this might be really funky to you. But as far as the spectrum of sour beers go, this tends to be like the mild. So this is like the first taste is free, get you hooked on sour beer type of style.
There you go.
It's
Gateway.
I would yeah,
Gateway beer.
gateway. I would say it's an acquired flavor.
Acquired. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to get used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we find more wine drinkers like to find their way into the craft beer market through sours. Something about the same way that it plays on the palate, I think.
Interesting.
So I'm going to call out one of the guys that I know that is a big wine connoisseur who's on this call. Mr. Stonebreaker, I know you're a big wine connoisseur. Did you tap into the watermelon yet?
Give me a minute. I'm finishing the orange wheat. I'm gonna get the watermelon now.
Oh, come on,
Okay.
you're behind.
Yeah, we'll give you a couple of minutes.
Do we get another pee break?
You can. We're done with content. You can take a
Yes.
break.
We're done with content.
We're going to finish up here with the
Q&A.
the peanut butter stout and Q&A while we're I think there's several of us that are staring at that one begging to take it.
Cool.
But yeah, we'll finish up with a good Q&A
All right.
and just kind of relax here and see what everybody's got.
All right. You guys want me to dive into it then on peanut butter?
Nope. We got pee breaks going on.
And
Got it.
some of us are not caught up yet. So
Yeah.
I'm really
Sorry,
interested.
I'm a
I'm really
professional.
interested since you talked about the wine. Most wine people like that beer, so I kind of want to see because I know Scott's a huge wine connoisseur, and kind of see what his thoughts are when he. I hate calling him out like that on a on a demo, but this is important stuff, folks.
Right.
hey Ryan,
Sure.
what other stouts do you make?
Oh man, so
Like
we've done a few Russian Imperials. That's like obviously milk stouts tend to be our wheelhouse, but we've done a handful of Russian Imperials, like traditional 10%ers.
My
Hop to the gills, just dark, bitter. They're out of this world. And actually, these next 2 weeks, we'll be kegging and canning 6 different barrel age projects that we've been sitting on for about 8 months. So we aged Imperial Milk Stout in, it was Buffalo Trace and Rabbit Hole bourbon barrels, as well as Martinique rum barrels.
Mhm.
So we're taking those beers, pumping them back into fermenters, flavoring them, and then canning and kegging off of those. So the beers that we're going to end up with will be barrel-aged Imperial Peanut Butter, barrel-aged Imperial Peanut Butter and barrel-aged Mexican Hot Chocolate Stout, which is like cayenne, spicy, cinnamon milk stout.
Nice.
One that's peanut butter, coffee, chocolate, and cinnamon. And then the rum ones are the ones that I'm most stoked about because you don't see rum barrel-aged beers a whole ton in the beer market. But we're doing a rum barrel-aged Bushwhacker milk stout, which is a popular cocktail down in Nashville. And then a rum barrel-aged cinnamon toast crunchata. So we're making like a kind of a rum chata thing, and we're throwing in a couple 100 pounds of cinnamon toast crunch cereal into it because why not? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what about the Russian Imperial? That's what I'm really most interested in.
So checking out your website, Ryan, I noticed that you've got like the cider and just a few beers on there. Is there other beers that you have that are not on your website?
Yeah, so it's a kind of like the curse that we find ourselves into. I would say go to our social media channels in order to keep it up to date on like what we're doing. But we shoot to do about 2 to 4 new beers every single week in our tap rooms, and sometimes we go over. Whoops. So the best way to keep in touch with what's on tap is number 1, come in, but number 2, go to social media because I don't have the fucking patience to update our website as quickly as we go through the beers.
On Twitter, take it.
Yeah, but so genuinely, like last year, through 2019 calendar year, it was 188 unique recipes of beer and cider that we produced. Again, unique, so not how many times we brewed this peanut butter milk stout we're about to drink, just different recipes. So we get to really experiment and have fun.
I found you.
Cool.
There you are.
Very nice.
Imperial peanut butter and jelly milk
All
stout.
right, so
Peanut butter and jelly.
So coming from a wine connoisseur, I actually kind of like the watermelon. It's
Nice.
And I will tell you how shocked I am because, frankly, I really don't like watermelon.
Yeah.
But I don't get a lot of like the watermelon flavor in it, and I can understand why you say that this is an entry point for wine drinkers because it's got the fruit forwardness that a wine's got, and it's got a very similar finish too.
Yeah, it doesn't taste like beer, like what somebody might traditionally think of beer as. So if somebody comes in and they're historically a wine drinker, they're looking for something white that we don't carry in any of our tap rooms. Like, hey man, try this and humor me.
I'm actually kind of impressed with it. Now that I've finished it, I'm kind of saddened by it.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Gone. Darn it.
I almost feel silly saying it, but like summertime between the orange wheat, the lime lager, and the watermelon goza, poolside, and throwing a shot of tequila in any of those beers it's where I like to be.
Seem to have an affection for tequila.
That's funny.
Yeah. It pairs. It was not by intent that our entire portfolio started pairing well with it, but it was a happy accident that we welcome.
I did make a porter once that had an entire fifth of tequila in it, and it was quite heavy, quite hot.
Well,
And you mentioned Russian stout a minute ago. I just wanted to speak up because I know my friend won't. But Jeremy actually, when he was brewing, he made a Russian stout, and it is still one of the top 5 beers I've ever tasted.
Love
Nice.
that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Russian Imperials can be amazing. The flavor.
It was
nice.
Complex.
I found it more similar to a porter than a stout because it did have, a little of the carbonation, but it was just mind blowing.
So like, this is a weird curve to take this perhaps, but not to be political here. Tennessee has like the worst beer laws in the entire country. So we pay the highest barrel tax in Tennessee than anywhere else in the United States of America, and we are more than double the tax per barrel than the number 2 highest tax in the country. Also, we weren't allowed to make a beer above 6.2% alcohol by volume until 2017.
Welcome to Ohio.
Yeah. So, well, it looks like Jim just said, thanks to all the whiskey providers, it's like, yeah, there's a group of people I'm not too fond of in Lynchburg, Tennessee, that are trying to protect their monopoly on the beverage business in this state. So
is that it?
Yeah, I think that the money that they have and the lobbying power that they have at the state level, not to mention the federal level, since I think Jack Daniels is China's like number 5 leading import from the U.S.
Wow.
Is just like you can't compare with it. All of the alcohol laws are regressive. We're dealing with all haven't been written since the was repealed 100 years ago almost. So it's one of the frustrations. But that being said, we weren't allowed to make a 6.3% beer up until 3 years ago in this state. So you needed a distiller's lesson in Tennessee to make, what would to us would be a normal strength IPA. And as a result, that barred us from making several styles: your Belgian triples, your Russian imperials, your barley wines.
Right.
So we're relieved, but now the ceiling in Tennessee went from 6.2 to 10.1, which still is pretty restrictive when it comes to your strong ales. And I mean, like, common knowledge. It's like, yeah, man, like if you want to get drunk, you can just drink 2 of those or 3 of those. It's like, why restrict it at all, in my opinion. So we have to produce all of our beer styles with that end in mind, that we can't go above 10.1% legally in this state.
Wow.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up, what percent alcohol are the ones that we're tasting today?
So actually the Goes is the lightest. I think the Goes is like 3.5%. Very much sessionable, like made to drink, beach, poolside, drink a 6-pack to yourself and be okay. All the other ones tend to be like right around the 5% range, and then Southeast was 6.2. So nothing's terribly potent, so to speak, out of this lineup.
How high was the tequila? That helps.
Let me do some bench trials and find out.
All right, so before we get to the peanut butter stout, because I know there's several of us, including myself, that are interested in this, we have an extra 6-pack of tailgate beer that we're going to raffle off real quick. And I'm going to ask a question, and the first person that responds in the chat, not out loud, but in the chat, will win this 6-pack of beer. So I'm going to give everybody just a couple minutes to get ready. If you want to, you can send it to me directly in the chat or the panel. Are we ready?
Everybody got your mouse clicked? You ready to go?
Here we go.
Ready.
All right. And I will give a little bit of a hint. This comes from the PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. Which PowerScale node supports NVMe drive?
Okay.
Nice.
Is that a good one? Is that a good question?
Yeah, I like that question.
I like it.
Absolutely. Had to be reading, because I don't think I said out loud. Rod might have said out loud, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Which PowerScale node supports NVMe drives?
That's an unfair question. I was more interested in the logger at that time.
Kind of a beer question.
That could be
I will give a second hint. If you Google PowerScale, Brad Blank gets it.
I see answers coming in.
There it is. It is correct. The PowerScale F600.
Is that Brad Blank?
Well done, Brad.
Correct.
Good job.
Good job.
Yeah.
Well done.
Brad, I will get you another 6-pack shipped out this week. So you should have something for this weekend, hopefully.
Nicely done.
Nicely done.
I'll take the opportunity to mention that that is a fast node, all NVMe, right? Like anything, there's always, a bottleneck, a point that you can't get past, right? And so many of the 1FS releases you're going to see from 9 to 9.1 to 9.2 are, every one of those has raised the bar, removed some kind of bottleneck, some kind of limitation that was keep holding the hardware back. So those nodes are going to just continue to get faster and faster and faster.
Does the 9.0 1FS run on the old Isilon type nodes too?
You can go back to Gen 5, right, Rob? Keep me honest here. So if you had some really, really, really old stuff, it wouldn't. But if you got any of the current couple of generations.
Well, I'm Gen 6. I'm just wondering if any of the if any benefits of 9.0 are realized on Gen 6, or if it's mostly about improving the PowerScale nodes.
Probably S3 is the biggest feature, but if you don't need that, I mean, that guide I threw up on the screen, it lists all the features and with what version of OneFS it came along with. So that's a helpful document just to kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm on this version, and if I went to the next one, I'd have that, and so on and so on. So, yeah, there might be a few things that would be like, wow, that'd be cool to have. So, cool. Good stuff.
All right, so as we finish this up, we're going to go into a little discussion around the peanut butter stout. And then we'll finish up. I know we're going over here, guys, and we appreciate everyone sticking around. But we'll finish up as we're sampling the peanut butter stout with some just general questions and a Q&A session just to finish out. So without further ado, Ryan, I'll give you the peanut butter stout because I'm not going to lie, I took a sample and it's not too damn bad.
Appreciate that. This is our best seller. And so when we say milk stout, think sweet stout. It's adding milk sugar. So we're actually introducing lactose to make this product. And we're at 5.2% alcohol by content. So most people think of stout, they think like super thick, super viscous, really heavy. We're not quite that. This is more of like a sessionable style stout. So it drinks a little bit more thin than say, obviously your Russian Imperials, but any other stout you would find on the market. And then it's kind of a trade secret, so I can't speak too much on it, but we are flavoring this with all natural peanut butter. It is a hypoallergenic product that we're using in this, and it is, again, organic and passes all the muster to be sold at Whole Foods. So we've been doing this beer since it was the end of 2015 that we made this for the first time. It was a very small batch, literally only a 6 keg batch. Thought that it would be a one and done thing. Quickly, everyone said, hey, you better not take that off tap or I'll stop showing up at your tap room. And we kept brewing it as a result. Thought surely come springtime, that customer is going to be a little bit quieter. No, it carried on through the summer. And so we haven't experienced any seasonality with this product yet, which is queer. You would expect like a stout to be really popular come wintertime, but summertime take like a nosedive off. So because it drinks a little bit more like a brown ale, like it's rather thin for a stout, it's a little bit more sessionable, and you could drink this, in the middle of the Tennessee heat come summer. So all the notes that you get off it, it's chocolate and roast and a little bit of like coffee just coming from the roasted malts we're using in it. But then like, the nose is sure shit is peanut butter. And it's not overbearing. It's not too sweet. It's not too peanut buttery. This is one of the most awarded beers in Tennessee. So we've won best experimental stout in the world, in the World Beer Awards 5 years straight with this now. It won gold in the Brussels Beer Challenge for 3 years straight. Won a couple US Open award for experimental stout / porter category. So we're super proud of it. Also, we do it on a nitro pour in all of our tap rooms and a couple of the bars around Tennessee, which is delicious. It's this like thick, creamy head, pours like, the traditional Guinness would. And then this time of year, we actually make an imperial version of this. So think of just using double the grain bill with the same amount of water, or think if you're making tea and you use twice as many tea bags with the same amount of water. Similar analogy, we're pulling more flavor, more sugar, more body, and later that results in more alcohol content out of our grain. So, sorry, go for it.
Those damn yeast people.
Yeah, awesome. It's tasty. And so again, like, if you're like me and you might be slightly savage when it comes to your casual drinking, You don't need to add sipping cream to do a car bomb with this because it already has milk sugar in it. Just find your favorite Irish whiskey and drop it in.
So not a rum beer.
Sorry?
Not a rum beer?
You could probably throw anything in this and be just fine. So what else is nice about this is most people think of stouts and they think that it is super heavy on the stomach or on the palate or very filling. And it's been a very nice segue to get people into the stout category because it isn't any of that. You know, look at it. It's light, like it drinks like a brown ale. This is much heavier than, say, Newcastle. And then, you know, everybody loves peanut butter. There's a little bit of nostalgia in that. And it's quite charming, truly. So we've had a lot of success with this product, and we're damn proud of it.
That's awesome.
I think for those who can't get tailgate brewing in their area, Sweet Baby Jesus might be somewhat similar.
Okay.
Not as good,
Yeah.
but similar.
That's a nice beer. I know that one. That's good.
Yeah.
DuClaw.
Good friends, man. Good people. Really good people.
So Tori had sent out earlier today for anybody outside of the state of Tennessee, I will post back out how you can actually get any of this beer. It's Wild Hare Beer Company, and they will ship it. Because I don't think, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys can ship out of state, correct?
Correct. So again, to harp on how regressive Tennessee's alcohol laws are, it's against the law for any Tennessee brewery to ship directly to consumers outside of the state.
Interesting.
So yeah, it sucks.
Hey, Ryan, I had experience with trying to get a peanut butter flavor in a stout, and I was amazed that we were able to do that with coffee. And it was the weirdest thing. It gave this huge flavor, and there wasn't a bit of peanut butter in the beer. Have you experienced that before?
What did you use? I didn't hear it.
Coffee.
Sorry, you break up. Coffee, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. So the most common question we get is like, how do you get the peanut butter flavor? And kind of my non-answer to that is always, there's 10,000 different ways to get the peanut butter flavor into beer, and we tried all of them, and we found one that works for us. I haven't used any coffees that give that character off specifically, but that being said, we do a ton of R&D. So we've got several talented brewers on our production team, all who have brewing certificates or degrees in firm sciences. So we're not afraid to dump one of our small batches if we take a shot at something like really, really off the wall. Like we made a strawberry Rice Krispie treat beer a couple of months ago.
Did it work?
It was a blast. It was, surprisingly did work. But
Wow.
we taken a couple stabs at some styles that aren't too dissimilar from that and tasted at the end and be like, nah, didn't work. And we're not afraid to dump a 15-barrel brew, to the tune of a few $1,000s in the name of quality.
That's a big badge to dump.
So 15 barrels is our pilot system, as crazy as that sounds. So our pub system that just makes beer for the national tap rooms is bigger than 90% of craft breweries in the U.S. today. Our production system out of our headquarters location, which made all of the beers that we sampled so far today, that is a 50-barrel brew house with 200-barrel fermenting tanks. So that system, same game. I have dumped beer off of that system before. You just start adding a couple more zeros to your cost.
Ouch, yeah.
But, if you make a product, you got to stand by it, and quality over everything. So the cost is irrelevant to what putting out an inferior product would be, especially in our business.
Great.
So let's take a few moments here to open up unmute everybody, anybody that wants to ask a question. I know that we have a question in regards to actually the beer. Ryan, do you guys make a bourbon beer?
So,
aged in bourbon barrels? Yeah.
yes, we have a few bourbon barrels. Like there's a constant barrel aging project that we have going. There's nothing that we do that we're adding bourbon to the beer directly.
Right.
Again, like in our state, that's illegal. You got me? Sorry, you guys hear me? It looks like it broke up a second.
Yep, no, I heard that.
All right, cool. So yeah, we do a series of barrel aged beers, and the next run is coming out the week of Thanksgiving.
Cool.
Cool. So does anybody, let's open it up for anybody that has a PowerScale Isilon question. Again, this is just a liner down here as we enjoy the last beer. Anybody has any questions over any of the topics of conversation today?
I have a question. Is PowerScale just Flash and NVMe, or going forward will all of the nodes, even the spinning disk nodes, be known as PowerScale?
Yeah, good question. So today, only the new nodes, which are the F200 and the F600, are PowerScale branded nodes. But 1FS 9 and later is branded PowerScale. So I would be willing to bet you that any of the new nodes that come out in the future, they'll all be branded PowerScale, regardless of if they're spinning drive or all flash or a hybrid.
So there will be a continuation of spinning disk nodes.
I'm not at liberty to disclose roadmap information, but don't be shocked if that were the case. But we could have a roadmap discussion under NDA. So just reach out.
We are NDA.
And as
Fair enough. We just can't talk on a public forum like this, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
pretty kitty.
Any others?
Very pretty kitty.
Yeah, Tori, we're seeing your kitten crashing the video.
Photo
She's got to
bomb.
make herself known. She's
Yeah.
here,
Of course, they all do that, don't they?
right?
I've been amazed, Ryan, with the amount of heat you can get just from the barrel itself, aging a stout in a bourbon barrel or any other number of them rum. It's just amazing. I mean, sometimes you can get, and I guess it's all about timing. I've been told the brewers tasted the beer and they're like, wow, that's tons of heat. And then literally like 2 weeks later, half of it's gone. They're like, so getting it out of the barrel at just the right time, I guess, matters a lot.
Yeah, so we did, there's 28 barrels that have been aging, and we'll do a barrel, we'll sample them about every 4 weeks. It's about a monthly project for us. But the crazy thing is how the variance from barrel to barrel. So despite being emptied at the same time, filled at the same time, stored at the same temperature, same altitude, everything should be identical. And you might taste one and just be like, not there yet. This needs more time.
Wow.
So it makes for some pretty long tasting panels when you have to taste 28 samples of Imperial Stout that's been barrel aged in bourbon barrels.
It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
I will fall on that sword for our company anytime it's
There you
offered
go.
to me. So
So do you guys do any like spiced beers with some heat, like jalapenos or habaneros or that kind of thing?
yeah, all right, so this is gonna sound crazy, but the hardest thing about that is when you put it on tap, that spice or that heat actually stains the beer line and you can't clean it. Like there's no acid wash that you can apply that will actually remove that heat because the flavor is so strong and it soaks into the plastic beer line so quickly. So it's an expensive endeavor because all of a sudden we have to replace every beer line that beer's ever been on tap. So usually when we do spice beers, it's in small and deliberate quantities. So this Mexican hot chocolate barrel-aged Imperial Peanut Butter Milk Stout will have a spice. I think it's a habanero extract is what we threw into it. So it's going to be a spicy beer. And then out of the cidery, our second tap room on Music Row in Midtown Nashville, we actually just made like a hot, spicy cider. So it's cinnamon and that habanero extract. So it's like kind of like drinking a shot of Fireball, as weird as that sounds. So really fun. But yeah, we've done a handful of them.
Cool. Wow, thanks for the great info and the great beers.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be a part of this. It's fun.
So I want to just thank everybody for their time today. Know we went a little bit over, but it was a little bit of fun there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your local account team and we'll get back with you. Otherwise, guys, I hope everyone had a great time. Enjoy the beer if you have any left, or if you haven't started like the folks there, Dave and Robert. Hope you enjoy it when you do. Ryan, thank you so much for the fantastic beer sampling. It was great. Tori, thanks for putting this all together. And we want everyone to be safe and enjoy yourself. So if there's not any questions, have a great evening, y'all.
You bet. Thanks, Tori, Jeremy, for helping out.
Everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Ryan,
Thank you, Ryan.
look you up when I'm in
Thank
Tennessee.
you.
next time.
Please do.
Thanks, guys.
You bet. Take
Peace,
care.
everybody.